My husband, John, missed our anniversary date and was off being all passionate with his side chick. Just as I was about to leave, he tells me, "Nancy, I'm sick. I've got a month to live. Can you spend what's left with me?" I was at the harbor, wind in my hair, waiting for John. I'd got flowers, candles, and saved up for a Patek Philippe just for him. Already way ahead of time. But then I check my watch again. From 6 p.m. to now, 11 p.m. Still no sign of him. Calls and messages went unanswered. The store staff came over, slightly impatient, saying, "Miss, we're about to close." I nodded, paid, and started heading home. I couldn't understand why John, who said he'd come, never showed up. Did he forget our 7th anniversary? Or was something else holding him up? The thought of that left me feeling down. When I got home and walked into our bedroom, there he was, sleeping peacefully. I walked lightly, not wanting to wake him. I tucked him in and softly brushed back his hair. I understood he's busy as a company owner, but then I noticed his phone clutched tightly in his hand. The screen lit up with a message from someone marked seductive siren on message, words filled with innuendo. I pulled the phone out gently and read, "John, when's round 2? Had a blast last time. Next time will be even better." I've never checked John's phone, so it wasn't locked. I could easily see his chats with this seductive siren. It was heart-wrenching, like a knife stabbing right through me. He'd read all my messages but didn't reply. Yet he was quick to respond to hers. Midnight chats led to scheduled meetings. My gaze shifted back to John, sleeping soundly. Memories of April 13th, 7 years ago, invaded my mind. He had flown across the country just for me, making heartfelt promises. "Nancy, I'll never make you sad. I'll cherish you forever." I'd believed in them for all these years. But reading those messages made me realize, maybe when he stopped caring about us, his love was already gone. Having poured some coffee, I sat on the balcony. Watching the sky change, I thought, maybe it's time to turn back when you hit a dead end. I don't want to regret it later, or pretend things are fine. So I drew up divorce papers, ready to let go. Holding those papers, I stood next to John's bed. He rubbed his sleepy eyes, slowly realizing what was happening. And with typical entitlement, he asked me to get water. I was about to go fetch it, but remembered I'd already placed it on the bedside. I exhaled something between a laugh and a sigh. Habits are indeed a scary thing. Then with a calm face, I turned to speak to John. But before I could, he said, "Nancy, I have something to tell you." Sitting up with a neutral expression, he spoke, eyes carrying something I couldn't quite decipher. "I'm sick. The doctors say I've got about a month left." The words were like a hammer blow to my head, leaving me dazed and panicked. I couldn't articulate what I'd planned to say, and I lost the courage to hand him the divorce papers. "Nancy, I know I don't have long. But you're the one I can't leave behind. Can we spend these days together?" His tone was steady, as always. He was a commanding man, a business leader, never sugarcoating his words. But around me, he spoke freely. He loved me, claiming I was his safe haven. Thinking about all our moments together, I was conflicted. I couldn't help but remember those messages, even the explicit ones. As I touched John's head, emotions swirled. Maybe I should ignore the betrayal, if he wanted to make amends. But his pitiful affection felt nauseating. But he interrupted, "Nancy, my love for you is true. If you don't want to stay with someone who's dying, I won't blame you. You're free to go." I recalled him sending a similar animated sticker to his fling. I felt sick to my stomach. After being with him for so long, I pushed down this swirling feeling and gently reassured him, "Don't worry. Just focus on getting better. You'll be okay, everything will be fine. I'll be by your side, taking care of you every day. But please, you have to be all in, okay?" I just waited for him to give me a nod or a yes. I looked at him hopefully. Then the doorbell rang. To help John heal faster, I whispered softly to him to lay down and rest while I hurried to deal with the situation outside. It was John's parents who showed up. His mom, Kate, was all decked out today, with her usual sharp look in her eyes. His dad, Matt, came in with his thermos, looking down on everything around him. Dad, Mom. I quickly rushed over to pour them both some tea, unsure if they knew about John's condition. Kate was the first to bring it up. Hey Nancy, don't you feel embarrassed staying home all day? Look at Lily, she's running a company. You can't even compare to her. Matt just grunted. He slammed his teacup down, finally chiming in with his own grievances. It's not just your career that's lacking. You haven't given us grandkids with John, and you spend your days doing things that turn our stomachs. Cooking. Researching AI. Is that what a woman should be doing? Without John paying your bills, you wouldn't survive. Every insult felt like a stab, but internally I countered each one. I stayed home mostly because John wanted to see me when he got back from work. I cooked because John's stomach was sensitive, so I learned about nutrition and cooking skills to make meals that were clean and balanced, and he enjoyed them. I'm not just aimless, I research AI because I have a knack for networking and programming. My projects, including game modeling and software, earn me money. I've even been invited to go public with a company, but I turned it down so I could focus on John. Honestly, I can manage just fine without John. As for kids. 3 years ago, I was pregnant, but during a painful moment, I couldn't reach John. I ended up having a miscarriage after a misstep. I felt guilty, and John thought it was intentional, so he rarely touched me anymore. John doesn't like anyone confronting his parents, especially when he's sick. Matt and Kate clearly didn't know about his illness, and I didn't want to add stress on him. So I just put on a smile and said, "It's my fault. I'll work to improve and not worry you both." After about 2 hours, Matt and Kate left with their dissatisfaction, not wanting to disturb John who was sleeping. When I returned to the bedroom, John was awake, eyes filled with tears. He sat on the small couch on the balcony, clutching a crumpled divorce agreement in his hand. "How could you do this to me?" His voice trembled, filled with betrayal and disbelief. "On our wedding day, you said you'd be with me until the end." "Yes, I said I'd let you go if I was dying, but why did you have this ready even before I told you?" I wanted to bring up his affair but was afraid it would set him off. Lips pressed, I simply replied, "Last night." John was taken aback. He furrowed his brow, anger growing. "Last night? It was just an ordinary night. What's gotten into you? How could you be so heartless?" His chest heaved, eyes red, veins popped on his neck and hands, as if he were deeply wronged. But his remarks suggested he forgot about our anniversary and our plan to celebrate. He also seemed to forget his tangled involvement with a woman behind my back. Seeing the empty water glass, I didn't speak further. I turned to refill it, hoping we could have a proper conversation afterward. Just as I was returning with the water, I saw John pale, slumping back on the sofa with his eyes shut. John. I shook him desperately, but his arms fell limp, breathing weakening. He didn't respond to my shouts. Then I noticed the empty sleep aid bottle on the table at some point. In that brief moment, he had taken a bottle of sleeping pills. The fear of losing him gripped me. Without bothering to properly put on shoes, I rushed to the car, clutching him. With the hospital being a drive away, I sped to the nearest ER. Every second was crucial. My heart thudded painfully, mouth dry with worry. Doctor. Please help my husband." I carried him, sprinting into the hospital. The doctor, seemingly startled at my pace, quickly took him to the emergency room, calming me. "Don't worry, miss. Do you want those wounds checked too?" I looked down to see my bare feet, covered in cuts from running on rough ground, bleeding and staining the hospital floor. I felt embarrassed, consoling the doctor, "Sorry, I'll clean up, promise." Knowing John's hospital stay might be lengthy, I wanted to learn more about his illness to better care for him. I asked the doctor for a thorough checkup, promising to follow their advice closely. As the doctor nodded, I realized John would likely need hospital accommodations, so I took the opportunity, while he was in surgery, to return home and pack essentials. Downloading John's favorite games on a tablet, packing his toiletries, his preferred outfit, I hurriedly filled bags. As I passed the balcony couch with everything in tow, I saw something in the cushions, a pill. A sleeping pill. I froze. Dared not to linger on my ominous suspicions. Slowly, I set down the bags, lifted the sofa cushion, and found dozens of sleeping pills hidden neatly underneath. John had tricked me. He never took those pills, nor did he pass out. The realization stung more than anything. When I decided to let go and try to move forward with John forever, he was busy figuring out how to guilt-trip me into staying, full of lies and unreasonable demands. It shouldn't be this way. My mood hit rock bottom, completely lost and dejected. Wearing my shoes again, I slowly walked back into the hospital and saw John talking to a doctor around the corner. "Doc, you know Company A, right?" "That's my company. I need you to fake a diagnosis for me, something that says I have about a month left to live." I admit pretending to faint was wrong, but I just needed to test my wife's sincerity. "It's a private matter between us, so don't get involved. Oh, and don't tell my wife about me video calling others. Those were just some casual flings. I know my wife is the real deal." Whatever, no need to explain. I truly cared for her. I only did all this because I caught her looking at my phone in the middle of the night. Love is just a superstition of perfect timing. I always thought that even if time wasn't eternal, my love with John could last forever. Now, it all seems so laughable. Love is only real in the moment, but what it leaves behind is so disappointing. I clenched my teeth. The numbness in my injured foot gave way to a stabbing pain as I walked on it. My fists tightened, and I took one last deep look at John. I tried to see the John from 10 years ago, the 20-year-old John, but it felt like a fog blocked my view. I couldn't see clearly, no matter what. I really left. Blocked him on all contacts, turned away without saying goodbye. That afternoon, I set off back to the little place where I grew up, Chicago. "You? Why are you back again?" My adoptive dad Jack playfully flicked my forehead, and I chuckled foolishly. Dragging my luggage in, I chuckled and said, "This time I'm not leaving. I'm staying with you for quite a while." "What's that supposed to mean?" Jack was chopping vegetables, waving a knife at me jokingly. I dodged and shared the truth. "I'm divorced and on my own. Don't you want me to have company rather than wandering alone out there?" Silence hung in the air. Jack stopped talking, processing my words. After a while, he continued chopping without asking why. He's always like that, supporting me without needing a reason. Then I heard him say, "Oh. If that's the case, maybe you should go back to your real father's place instead of running to this remote little town." I smiled softly, pointing to my leg. There was a long scar there. Jack knew about it. Left from being hurt by my biological sister. After all these years, he wished I'd go back to that family and be loved by many. Jack, forever worried. I smiled bitterly, covering the scar with my hand. It still ached, reminding me of the day I returned to that house. All alone, after being raised by Jack for 17 years, suddenly the city's richest man found me, hugging me and saying, "Daughter, Dad finally found you." I went missing as a child, became an orphan. Jack adopted me. But he was just one person and growing old, worried that if something happened to him, I'd be left alone, struggling. So when my real father showed up, Jack pushed me back to my biological family even though it was hard. He said, "Nancy, go. There you'll be loved by many. You have siblings and your dad, no need to worry about anything." I looked forward to the life Jack described. Never experienced it, didn't know how it'd feel. I remember my biological father introducing me to my sister Lily with tears in his eyes. He said our mom died of illness years back. He said the family business needed both Lily and me. Lily takes care of stability, Nancy, you take risks. You're like Dad, bright enough for great endeavors, he said, coaching me. But soon, he too passed away. From then on, it was just Lily and me at home. She was my sister, a relative I hadn't seen for over a decade. I hoped we'd be close and supportive of each other, but Lily always seemed to leave me out. I don't remember how many times she quietly took everyone on trips, leaving me alone. Or how often she took me out, ditched me, and I had to rely on local police to get home. Slowly, I realized Lily didn't care for me, maybe my presence was a huge threat. Lily controlled the business, I had no part in it. Guess that's why she plotted that car accident against me. The rain was heavy that day, and I was pinned by the car on a slope. For the first time in my life, I felt so helpless, unable to climb up the slope. It was like my fingertips slipping at the edge of a cliff. Dying like that didn't seem so bad, I thought. But through the rain, John appeared. John saved me. If he hadn't, I wouldn't have naturally grown feelings for him. Wouldn't have met, fallen for him, left home, and moved in with his big family. Had I survived that crash, I would have gone back for revenge against Lily. After all, my real father's first lesson was, cross me thrice, and I'll break those ties. Never be burdened by social niceties and relationships, ruthlessness sometimes opens new paths. I saw truth in that. Nancy, stop zoning out. If you're free, come help. Jack snapped me out of my heavy memories, flicking my forehead again and put me to work, busy cooking with him in his restaurant. Hey, 1 bowl of peach blossom noodles. A guy in a sharp suit with a buzz cut and an intense vibe ordered. I answered, rushing to serve the noodles. Everything was fine until I noticed a burly woman, standing too close to him, watching him with bad intent. Unbelievably, her hand slowly reached for his butt. No way I'd let that go. Pointing at her, I sternly shouted. Hey! What do you think you're doing? Check yourself. The woman got even more upset. She reached out and boldly touched the back of the man's hand. He immediately shivered and frowned at her. I can fall for whoever I want. Why do you care so much? I didn't even touch you. She was so bold and self-righteous, she wouldn't let go even a bit. As I shouted to Jack to call the cops, I quickly rushed over to scuffle with the middle-aged woman. It wasn't long before the police showed up. Out of breath and with a bruised face, I pointed at the woman I had punched, now with a black and blue eye, and reported. It's her, she harassed this handsome guy. But that woman held her eye and started crying out loud. Oh, poor me. I'm just an old lady with bad legs, can't even walk properly. I didn't do anything and got hit for no reason. All dramatic and acting like she's the victim. I then pointed to the witness and the actual victim, this extremely handsome dude. Officers, ask him, he'll tell you. So the officers turned their gaze towards the handsome guy. His chiseled face and pretty eyes were tinged with a hint of red at the corners. He had an innocent look and, being tall, he gingerly pointed to me. Yep, I know. It was this person's fault. That middle-aged woman didn't touch me at all. She just punched her out of nowhere. Me, are you serious, man? You're really playing games, huh? You into this stuff? I was stuck in the police station. No one to bail me out at all. I was hoping Jack would find someone to pull some strings to get me out. Then I saw the handsome dude from before, strutting in with 2 people. Lily and John. I squinted at him as he approached me, bowed his head, flashed a bright smile, showing off his white teeth, and reached out his right hand for a friendly shake. Naturally, I looked at him as if he were an idiot. He didn't mind, smiled slightly, turned his head, and said, Hi Nancy, I'm Eric. He quickly glanced at the cops, then leaned in close, and the smell of sandalwood instantly filled the air. Paired with Eric's amazing physique, it left you with daydreams, and I turned my head slightly blushing. I heard him whisper softly in my ear. Sorry about today, but it was kind of incidental. I wanted to meet someone like you for a while now, and it just so happened John was looking for you everywhere to keep you here. I didn't expect to act as the hero today, but you just jumped right in. I was a bit angry at hearing this, a rush of breath stuck in my chest, staring at him. You're quite the principled one, aren't you? Eric smiled with a pair of dimples, using his height to his advantage, patting my head before I could finish talking, and then walked away. Then, there was John, whom I hadn't seen for days, smoothly talking to the cops to get me released. Once outside the station, he pulled me along, insisting that I talk with Lily too. Long time no see, how you been, sis? Lily had her hands in her pockets, and when I looked at her, I noticed, as usual, a smirk of disdain and dislike aimed at me. So annoying. Thanks for your concern, I'm not doing well. After a short reply, I didn't even want to look at Lily. Instead, John continued the conversation. Speaking earnestly, Nancy, you leaving me was one thing. I know you misunderstood me, but how could you treat your sister like that? I put a lot of effort into getting her to come here. I hoped you'd learn some of her business smarts. You've got no money, you're weak, indecisive. I want you to toughen up and come back home. Nancy looked at Lily with a cheeky grin. Lily had a distant smile, tapping her fingers impatiently, clearly wanting to leave. But she still spoke loftily. Honestly, our family can't support this, Nancy. If it weren't for the fact you invested $30 billion in our project this time, I wouldn't bother seeing this useless person. John's smile was textbook perfect. He nodded in agreement. Yes, you're right. I think so too. Unable to stand the scene, I turned to John and whispered, I need to talk to you alone. John showed a flash of annoyance, as if saying it was unnecessary, but eventually nodded lightly and went with me to another spot. John had put in some extra effort to dress up today. He wore the blue suit from our first date, had a Mont Blanc watch on his wrist, and his shoes were polished to a shine. For a moment, I was dazed, as if transported back to those youthful days of a pounding heart. What do you want to say? Want an explanation? Or are you here to apologize for deciding to divorce and leaving me all of a sudden? His words snapped me out of it. I focused on the slightly tilted head, chest heaving slightly, teeth grit, glaring at me with a face full of feeling betrayed. A faint sense of amusement born from it made me chuckle under my breath. I looked him in the eyes and asked. You know why I left, right? You know she set up the accident, yet you still want me to go back there? Of course. Don't be short-sighted. There's loads of resources and great role models, better than just being useless. Plus, it's not just me who thinks you're a failure, my folks think so too. You didn't know? I laughed, continued to ask, alright, don't worry about that. But you know why I left. You talking about that affair again? I told you, it was just some fun. My heart's yours. Stop holding on to it, okay? There are plenty of men who play around more than me, I'm being really good to you. I stared at him and said slowly, sickness, sleeping pills. After a moment of thinking, I amended jokingly, it's been 3 months, and you're still alive and kicking. John paused, a mix of confusion flashed across his face. That stuff was real, maybe the doctor misdiagnosed, and as for the pills, you saved me in time. Unrepentant, a habitual liar, insincere, arrogant. I was left with no choice but to shake my head, not wanting to argue further with John. I just said, that's it, we're done. Don't come looking for me again. I tried to walk away, but John grabbed my arm tightly. He was all teary-eyed, probably hoping that, just like before, his tears would soften me up and I'd give in to whatever he wanted. But he said I had no opinions of my own, not realizing that I gave up my own choices just for him. Thinking about it now, all those thoughtful things I did for John, was I just being foolish? I couldn't help but shake my head self-deprecatingly and softly said, let go. But John didn't. He started begging, saying without me, there had been no one to make him water, take care of him when he's drunk, or make meals for him. No one to listen to him or do his laundry. After a shower, there had been no hair drying session. Nancy, don't go, okay? I really need you and I like you. I'll overlook your flaws if you promise to work on them. Just don't leave. Hearing that, I couldn't help but laugh out loud. So, he is aware of how much I've done for him. But what has John ever done for me? Just one grand proposal, flying over to see me. That was enough for me to want to devote my whole life to him. But to him, I was just someone who met his needs. Only called upon when convenient and forgotten otherwise. By the way, on the day of the miscarriage, you never talked about where you were. Was it because you were with someone else? I shoved his hand away, looking him in the eye. His face showed panic, and he struggled to find words. Okay, I get it. I forcefully pulled my arm back and told him, I don't love you anymore. Don't come looking for me. There's nothing left between us. Ignoring his sobs and pleading, I turned and walked away with purpose. That's when I met Eric's teasing gaze. He leaned against the wall, smirking as he watched the drama unfold between me and John. Casual and amused. I gave him a once-over, noticing Lily behind him, trying really hard to flirt. She was going on about the universe, life, and love. She seemed smitten with Eric. As for him, he didn't even give her a passing glance. Looking at me with eyes full of laughter, Eric said, Hey, beautiful Nancy, don't leave just yet. Can we talk? I paused, looking at his animated face, and asked, What's there to talk about? Eric chuckled, gave my sleeve a little tug. I'm interested in you, and I want to marry you. Are you really going to leave without discussing something this big with me? Hearing this, I was stunned. I thought of how impulsive and shocking this sudden proposal was and gave Eric another look over. From our few encounters, I've figured him out. If he wants something, he'll get it. By hook or by crook. He has the audacity to be relentless yet looks all innocent and naive, with an uncanny ability to deceive. I was about to refuse, but Eric stopped me with a gesture, and Lily jumped in, hurling insults my way. Why should this loser marry you, Eric? She snapped. Your father picked me for the corporate marriage. Together we'd be a powerhouse. Don't let a moment of madness change everything. Lily took a step closer, disdainfully pushed my shoulder. If you know what's good for you, get lost. You're a nobody here. She barely got a second push in before I clenched my fist, aiming for her face. Eric's hand caught her wrist like lightning. A chilling coldness settled over him. Lily, get lost. I rarely listened to my father, so why worry about his arranged marriage? Lily's face turned beet red, mouth open to protest, but Eric cut her off. Plus, I'm drawn to Nancy. We'll make our own future together. Without dead weight like you around, she'll do even better. I looked at Eric, steadfast and confident. He turned to me, wearing a mysterious smile. After all, I've got a knack for picking only the best. Isn't that right, Nancy? Eric got rid of Lily and walked with me back to Jack's noodle place. Dropped a small fortune on noodles, charming Jack into letting him stay. Eric sat, fingers entwined, elbows on the table, staring at me. I caught a glimpse of his tattooed shoulder blades and couldn't help but sneak a second glance. While looking away, Eric pulled me closer. Come on, stop hiding. You, the game dev with the username Love is Fire, can we have a serious chat? That caught me off guard, like thunder in the dead of night. This time, I didn't move away. Standing by his side, looking at him, I just couldn't comprehend. Watching Eric sip water calmly, I realized his other identity. He was the online buddy who I clicked with, my go-to for new ideas. Always understanding, always supportive. The first to offer investment. Our minds were in sync. I imagined him as a tomboy girl, but turns out, it was a boy all along. Shocked and spinning, Eric leaned into me, words soft against my ear. Oh, And about your leg injury from the accident? How's it healing? How did he know? Only a few of us knew about it back then. It turned out Eric saw me under the car that day. His arm was in a cast, couldn't help, so he asked John to pitch in. Once I was safe, Eric quietly left. Buried in thought, a mix of emotions settled in. Considering future family plans, I should ask. His voice was quiet, hints of shyness. I caught sight of Eric's shy demeanor. Unbelievable for such a tall guy, but somehow endearing. The tree branches swayed gently, and the sunlight was just right. Even though it was broad daylight, I felt like a cloud was lifting, and a missing crescent moon was appearing, hitting my soul deeply. The worn-out universe collapsed, and I locked eyes with Eric. In that moment, I found a place that truly belonged to me. What are you daydreaming about? Are you in or out? Give me an answer. Eric gently tapped my head, and without thinking, I responded. Yes. Let's give it a shot. Eric laughed, pulling me into his arms. He smiled, but continued to ask. By the way, before this, is there anything you need to do? The wedding won't happen for at least a month. My ear was pressed against his erratically beating heart, and I thought to myself. We really do have a connection. I actually have things to take care of. Lily. The ruthlessness my father taught me, I'll have to use it on you first. Gathering evidence, misleading Lily into investing in a shell project, and sending someone to secretly interview and report on her factories. I pulled every trick in the book. Within a week, I turned Lily's company upside down, keeping her too busy to see straight. And just as she struggled to sort her finances, the police showed up, presenting undeniable evidence of her crimes. When the well-known corporate president gets arrested and jailed. Unscrupulous merchant. Squandering people's blood and sweat money. Shocking. Their product safety risks are enormous. Secrets of the dark industry. When the news was all over the place, I was sipping tea, planning the public offering for my gaming company with Eric and preparing to complete our wedding. Wife, does this look good? Eric was looking fine in an exquisite and expensive suit, standing straight in front of me, so handsome it made my mouth water. I instinctively nodded, and then was wrapped up by this tall guy who bent slightly, whispering in my ear with a soft voice, by the way, is the guest list ready? I thought of crossing out John's family, froze for a second. Then I looked at Eric, beaming with anticipation. It's good, it's really good. I won't let anyone ruin our wedding. I hope this time, I can grow old with you. Eric smiled, looking relaxed and happy. Coincidentally, I feel the same. On the wedding day, Eric and I dressed to the nines. News came that John kicked up a fuss, calling me a heartless woman, saying I broke my promise. Apparently, he downed another bottle of sleeping pills to get me to see him, ending up in the hospital. When I heard this, I didn't care. He's insignificant to me. He doesn't matter in my world. After all, my true love was holding my hand. When he's tired, he'd rest his chin on my shoulder, giving me the calm feeling like he entrusted the whole world to me. When he gets up early, he would thoughtfully make breakfast for me. It might not always taste great, but it's still the best breakfast I've ever had. At night, he'd use my arm as a pillow, snuggling closer, and with a playful tone, he'd tell me, "Hug your husband tighter, so he's yours inside and out forever." Okay. That's always my reply. In countless moments of watching him sleep with his eyes closed, I'd feel his steady breathing, see the gentle flutter of his eyelashes. I'd allow myself to wallow in a sweetness akin to being immersed in honey. I'd think, I want to stay with my love forever, and I'm certain we will.